Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. This is my care collab for Oncidium Twinkles. So why are we looking at these two then? Well, basically, I'm going to take the label out of that one and hide it. If you look up the parents of the Twinkles, you will find that you get Ornithorhynchum and this one, Gyrophorum. Those are the parents. Yeah. Now, everywhere you find that information is wrong. Staggering statement. I don't care. It's wrong, and it's about time this got put right, because it annoys me. The Ornithorhynchum was incorrectly named almost from the beginning, because it was based on a black and white diagram. And in relatively recent times, it's actually been proved that that description was describing a yellow Oncidium. Does that look yellow to you? No. So when they actually found out the discrepancy, the one that everybody has assumed was correct and now proved to be incorrect needed a new name. And that new name is on my label because I want it right. And it's Oncidium sotoanum. That is the other parent for the Twinkles. And quite honestly, if I had any Twinkles in bloom at the moment, you'd soon see the resemblance. But basically, the sotoanum is quite variable. I mean, this is a poor quality plant. Don't take that as a classic example. Grown well, sotoanum is vigorous and can produce many spikes per pseudobulb. When this was in its heyday, it actually had 6 spikes on one pseudobulb. I'd never heard of that from any type of Oncidium before. Well, we messed that up, didn't we, by frazzling the roots in the heat and forgetting to water it. But hopefully it's coming back. It is showing signs of new growths, and hopefully it needs to go in a much smaller pot to recover properly, but wrong time of year, not enough root activity to warrant disturbing what I've got. So that's why that's staying where it is for now. This has had its repot and it is actually coming back into growth now. Blooms on this are tiny and yellow, yeah? Now if you stop and think about it, yeah? If the original plant was yellow, yeah, and this one's yellow, and you hybridize them together, why on earth would you get anything other than yellow? Think about it. However, sotoanum is very variable, from almost white to a deeper colour than this. And that variable factor mixed in with this one keeps the plant small. Yeah, because this is, as I said, this is a poor example. This plant could be a lot bigger than that. So this one keeps the plant small and provides a basic shape. This one provides the variety of colours that have appeared in the Twinkles and also provides the main fragrance. So those are your two parents. And now, before we forget, in the time-honoured tradition, we'll do the other channels involved. I should take a seat and pull up a chair and get a coffee, because this is going to take some time. Okay, the Twinkles. Now, I'm including this one until such time as I can exclude it. That one came from Jeff's. We've got 2 nice spikes on it. I think, looking at the spikes, we may be looking at a different type of Oncidium than a Twinkle, but I'm going to keep it down as a Twinkle until it proves otherwise, which it needs to open some blooms to do that. All of my Twinkles are mounted across the board. There's none left in pots. I had trouble with them in pots on the grounds that well, in some cases the pots were a trifle large and therefore just stayed wet too long. These do like to drink when they're in full active growth. Unfortunately, the way they actually bloom, that active growth of the plant itself almost comes to a standstill quite a long time before the blooms open. And it's very easy to think, oh, I've got some spikes growing, I'd better, plenty of feed and water. And they don't work like that. They like to be drier. Once the plant growth stops, and the bulbs are mature and the leaves are full size, they don't like being wet because they're not going to use it, and that can cause the root rot, which was the problem I had. Anyway, coming along here, somewhere in here, no tags, they've all been lost, we have Tiny Twinkle, that one I know, and that's probably going to be the first one to open. It's all in the name, you can see these buds are starting to swell. And they are tiny, like it says, Tiny Twinkle. So those will probably open first. And then in amongst here, we've also got the cinnamon one, we've got the yellow one, and we've got Red Fantasy, which isn't red, it's pink. Well, it's dark pink. And then somewhere in there we've got a cross, which I'll put the name up for. But I can't put the names against each one because I don't know which one's which until these blooms open. But what I will do is, as this video's progressing, I'll put pictures up of the twinkle blooms that I've had on these plants last year this time, sort of thing, so we can sort of see what the blooms look like. But it's a care collab really, so we're not supposed to be just looking at pretty blooms, we're talking about how to look after them. They have an annual growth cycle, not all Oncidiums do, but the twinkles do tend to stick to that, and their time for blooming is around Christmas time. Now in some years it'll be early, and it could be quite early in December, and other years it'll be later, but it's around into the winter time. They start spiking quite a bit before then, back towards the end of the summer, but they do take a long time to grow those spikes on. It's one of those don't hold your breath. The blooms will come eventually. Now as far as growth is concerned, their main growing season is the UK summer, the normal growing season. And a lot of that is geared up to our day lengths, and literally the nice long days, warmer nights, and plenty of temperature range in the daytime. They will take heat, but not too much. You need the humidity if those temperatures are going to rise much above sort of 26, 27. If you've got temperatures going above that, you need to keep your humidity up. But if you haven't got temperatures going too high, then these don't need high humidity. You can get away with sort of 50, 60%. So they'll happily grow in a home, perhaps with a bit of extra humidity from the dry air in the winter time. But, because of central heating, that's all I'm thinking of. But the thing that's important for these is don't keep their roots soggy. They need some air around their roots. So yes, they're a very fine rooted plant. The root systems are very fine indeed, but putting them in a really small bark mix with lots of sphagnum moss and stuff like that, which will eventually compact, might be just a bit too tight for those roots. They're not the sort of plant that needs to go in chunky bark. Yeah, they need to have contact with their media, and I've found that my plants are growing better since they got mounted. Now that's in my environment with my high humidity, because obviously in the summer you'd be looking at watering a minimum, because they're growing in the summer, a minimum of once a day and possibly twice when they're in active growth, especially if you've got high temperatures combined with long days. This is the thing with the UK. In the winter time you might get a bright sunny day, but it's only short. It's only a third of the day of daylight, and part of that is becoming light and then getting dark. So it's not full light for 8 hours. Probably full intense light for only 6. Now that's not enough to keep these plants growing. They will slow down to a stop. Luckily in the UK, that's also the time they would naturally stop anyway, because it's when they bloom, and most of the growth has finished by then. So it works. They grow pretty well in the UK, despite our short winter days. But when they're actively growing, the new growths will come after the blooms have faded. They don't last too bad. I wouldn't say they're long lasting, but they're not bad. So you're looking at late winter, early spring, the blooms will have all finished on most twinkles, and not long after that, if not before in some cases, your new growths will start. Now that's the time when you'll get new root systems under those new growths, so if you need to repot, watch for those new roots. Yeah, that's the time to change your media if you need to, and they will adapt to that new media quite easily once those roots get going. So if you plan on changing your media, I would say it's imperative that you wait for those new roots, because new roots will adapt very easily to a new environment. Older roots are not so good at that. They will often just die. They'll just turn their toes up. So I would say medium to high light, but go steady with dramatic changes from lower light to higher light, because they will singe, they will burn. So pretty good light for these. Feed levels, they don't need high feed. Very few Oncidiums need high feed. They won't use it. They're very adapted to being able to utilise a small amount of feed and get a lot of growth out of it. I mean, they're not big plants at the best of times, but yeah, so you don't need to, I would say in their active growing season, it's more important to give a little often than give a 4-course meal and then starve the flipping things. So keep a good regular supply of low-level quality feed and they will grow like mad and they'll do well for you. Temperatures, these are intermediate, so they will take a bit of heat up the higher end in the growing season. There's no point in keeping them all cosy and warm in the winter when they're not growing, because again, they won't utilise the heat at that point. I would say low temperatures. I mean, I go down to 15, that's my winter low, and these show no adverse effects of going down to that temperature. I'd suspect they go down to probably 12 and still be happy, possibly a little bit lower. But go steady dropping those temperatures down when they're in active growth. That's not a good idea. In the winter, I know there's spikes going all over the place, but the plant itself is almost resting. The plant growth has virtually ceased. So there we go, quite honestly. They grow best for me mounted. They can grow quickly and form sizable plants quite quickly. I mean number of pseudobulbs rather than actual height, if you see what I mean. They can expand quite dramatically, and a well-grown plant with a good root system in pretty good conditions is liable to produce 2 new growths per previous growth. So if you think about that, the rate of expansion is pretty good, and you can get quite sizable plants quite quickly. They tend to hold their leaves for a couple of years, but older bulbs will eventually drop their leaves, and you can often get old tired parts of a plant, you know, where you've got a group of pseudobulbs with no leaves at all, the sort of back end of the plant where it's grown away from that area. There's no reason why you can't cut that bit off when you repot. It's sort of draining resources if you've got a very active plant, because some of those resources are going into there as backup. Well, if it's grown really well with a good root system, you don't really need the backup, do you? You would probably be able to get those to sprout if they were separated, and you sort of, you know, put them in some moss or something. You might get some new growth on those older parts of the plant, and then you've got new plants for nothing, you know, which in the UK, you know, it's difficult getting older plants at the best of times. Our choices are limited. So, I mean, that's really how I look after them. They're what I call run-of-the-mill. In my environment, they need no special attention whatsoever, apart from the fact they seem to grow better mounted. But apart from that, they don't get any special attention. They don't need any specific positions. I mean, they're down here at the moment for filming, but they normally live up there. That's not up in the roof, but it's quite high up, but it's on the opposite side to the light. Yeah, so the light has to come through the grow room and through a few plants before it gets to those racks there. So it's good light, but not the brightest light. So that's where they live. Yeah, I mean, they're normal Oncidiums, you know, you've got the normal type pseudo bulbs. Older ones, you can see there's a few older ones in the centre of the plant. Newer ones tend to be around the outside. I always get a strong boost, massive new growth along the top of this one. It's going to be off the top of the mount soon. And several of those new growths are still growing because they were late starting. So this one is still in a slow but active growth. And that might mean we get some late spikes. We already have late spikes because this one was the first one and it's growing on well, and the others have only just started. So it's grown differently this year. And it's not going to do it a lot of good falling over flat on its face, is it? So there we go. I'll leave it at that. As I say, there's lots of other people taking part in this one. So you've got an amalgamation of information based on hopefully different growing environments. And, you know, I would suggest that if you're thinking of getting twinkles or you've got them and they're not doing very well, find one of these channels that's got an environment or a country and environment that's like yours. And then see what they're up to, see why theirs are doing okay and perhaps yours aren't. Yeah, that's the whole idea of this type of care collab, is to get an amalgamation of lots of countries and different ways of growing, different media, and then it's for you to decide which one would suit you best and which one is closest to how you grow anyway. And there you go. Anyway, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.